Time, cost, risk. The management of these factors, more than any other, underpin a CFO's ability to provide financial leadership that is both effective and efficient. It is for this reason that we developed Sage Intacct, the premier cloud-based financial and accounting management system for CFOs of medium-sized growing businesses. In Sage Intacct, you access a tool that migrates complex financial functions and process, provides real-time visibility of meaningful data regarding key operational and financial processes. Powered by electronic processing and machine learning, Sage Intacct monitors business processes, diagnoses potential risks, and avails the opportunity for you to choose the best response to any uncovered threats. Sage Intacct is engineered to ensure that your business is consistently aligned with the latest regulatory requirements. With as much as 79% reduction in closing time, average return on investment of 250%, and payback of less than 6 months, a solution built by finance professionals for finance professionals. So partner with Sage Intacct and be empowered to make impactful decisions that navigate your organization to growth, efficiency, and success.
Welcome. Thank you. The latest and the final rendition of the Sage Future of Finance. I do say back because that the Sage has been walking with you as its stakeholders in your digital transformation throughout the pandemic. In fact, I remember one of the very first sessions in August of 2020 when Sage first launched its cloud solution that allowed you to work remotely. It was a different kind of setting than what we're seeing today. I was at the headquarters in Johannesburg in one of the offices, and all the speakers and panelists were actually in separate rooms in the office observing all the COVID-19. Today, completely different, as you will soon see. I can also tell you that even though I will be joined by my panelists in the same room, we have undergone quite rigorous safety protocols to ensure that we do stay safe in this time when, of course, we are still fighting the pandemic. I guess what this essentially does is the change that has happened and the journey of change that we have all walked through, and also just how much of that change we have embraced and how we have used technology in something, for instance, like hybrid conferencing in this setting where we are able to be in one room and connect with you remotely, but not also losing the importance or the importance of the human elements and human touch. You actually just saw a couple of the friends that I am joined by today, and perhaps this is the perfect time for me to introduce you to them, starting on my left with Gerhard Hartman, the Medium Business Vice President at Sage Africa and the Middle East. And then to my right, Mr. Jordaan Burger, Vice President of Finance of Africa at Middle East and APAC at Sage. And last but not least, we are joined by, I think it is a new face for many of you who have been with us on this journey in the past year, Ms. Debbie Kapoock, a professional business coach and mentor, consultant, also coach at the Gordon Business Institute of Science, as it's GIBS, it's commonly known. And so a few housekeeping rules that I would like to share at this juncture is that this is not a talk shop. This is the final session in which we do get to spend some time with each other as we try to figure out what to do in an uncertain environment still. So it's not a talk shop, and we do want you to engage with us, and we want to engage with you. So feel free at any point to type in your questions or even share your feedback in the chat function. And in fact, perhaps now is the perfect time for you to engage with us. We do have a poll that's coming up that we'd want you to participate in. You should see it on your screens right now. And we will give you a minute or so to answer that poll question. Right, I understand we've got some fingers that are quite active already. We'll give you just a couple of seconds more just to respond to the question on your screen. perhaps had introduced you and I didn't even say good morning to you, or good morning.
Good
morning. And Gerhard, perhaps we begin, with a few reflectory remarks from yourself.
Fifi, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to have you with us today. As Fifi said, we're in the studio, and it's a more personal interaction than what we had in the previous sessions. And I think Fifi said, very importantly, let's set the seeds. So, the topic of discussion for the day is of finance. But before we dive into the details, there, I think very importantly, if you don't know Sage is a global provider of technologies for small, medium enterprises, and we're there to support the businesses to make sure they're successful. We want to create with our technology solutions, specifically our cloud-native products, to make sure you have better insight, that you can make quicker and faster decisions, and to obviously make sure that you're successful in it. And we see the series that we've run over the past couple of months, but very importantly, what did we see as Sage, what the experience of businesses are in the market. Because we saw that companies want to be able to make better informed decisions. They want to make sure that they streamline their operations, and at the end, to result in having a better profitability for your organization. What we've also seen over the past couple of months is the fact that companies that made the decision to change some of their processes internally by adapting cloud technology was more successful and streamlined. And as I said, making sure they have better insight in closing that information gap. And also very important is organizations want to communicate better with their employees as well as their customers. And by adapting and bringing technology into your business, they got that, I want to say, the tick of communicating faster and better to customers and employees.
Yeah, it kind of speaks to the outcome of the poll, Gerhard, that we can now see in terms of how our audience members have voted. It looks like there has been a huge awareness and the recognition of the benefits of adopting cloud for one's organization. Are you surprised much by the outcome?
Not really, and I'm actually glad to see that 64% of the audience said yes, they know of the benefits, which means companies and individuals are becoming more and more aware of how business changed. And I think, again, before the pandemic, we were all used to interacting, being at the office, sharing information. And all of a sudden that disruption was caused, and now you think, but how do I access my information? Because it sits in my office. Or how do I speak to my teams? Because I could always do a meeting quickly in the morning. And that changed dramatically, not just the technology side of it, but the human side of it as well. To say, as a function or as teams, how do we keep that connection to make sure you can still perform of what you need to do in your daily job?
Yeah.
And it's fantastic to see that adoption and that awareness is there for organizations.
I mean, I know we're going to get to speaking a bit about, the organizations that are not yet adopting the cloud, but it is a significantly high number. I mean, a third of your audience today is saying that they actually don't know the benefits of adopting a cloud software. And I suppose it just speaks to the importance of a session like this to educate them about those benefits. Let's go on to our second poll for this morning. As I did say, we really want to engage you and we want you to engage with us. And in order for us to do so, it's really about understanding the pages that we are both on and ensuring that we do and we are on the same page. So the second poll should be up on your screen right now. Give it a go. Again, giving you a minute or so to respond, and then we'll talk about those responses. All right, Jordaan, as we just wait for the results of the poll to be published, perhaps some opening remarks from you, sir, regarding your expectations of today's session, particularly representing most of the attendees that are attending today, being individuals who head up the finance function in their organization.
Thank you, Fifi. And hello and welcome to everyone in the audience. I really like the introduction that you gave, taking us back to a year where this campaign started, but I want to even go back further than that. The conversation about cloud has been around even before this pandemic hit. And I think that was a very tough thing for us to sell, to get the benefits or to get customers to actually realize what those benefits are. Today, it's much more tangible for everyone. We've seen lockdowns happen. We've seen people being away from the office. We've seen people needing to operate remotely, as Gerhard said, communicate with their customers remotely. So I think it's a lot more real for us today, this whole cloud world. What I also want to emphasize though, is that it's not stopping. It's not stopping even though we are sitting face to face today and we can see restrictions are better and that we can interact in a more personal way. The whole cloud message is not going away. This is a permanent change. And it's extremely important, especially for finance functions, to be part of that change. We run the risk of not being part of it, not being part of the design of digital transformation within businesses. It's not the sole jobs of chief data officers, chief information officers. We as finance leaders need to be actively involved in the digital transformation in our businesses, be part of that and be part of this future of cloud for our businesses.
And so the outcome of the second poll has come out, and it was just really related to the role that people and technology play in the digital transformation. And I know that the team at Sage is quite passionate about the fact that it's about balance, but it's quite a tight split there, Jordaan, if you look at it. I mean, tight split between it's all about technology and also the fact that it helps humans more than it harms them. What do you make of the outcome of that poll?
So the way I see it is you've got digitalization, which is for me the technology bit. If we go back to the age of cameras before that was digitalized, we all had cameras with film rolls and things like that. And if we were at that point scared of this digitalization, and if we didn't think of that concept very much linked to us as humans or consumers, it wouldn't have made sense for us. But let's see where we're at today. With digital cameras, more people in fact have access to cameras. We can take better pictures. We've got our cameras on us. It's made a difference. It's actually benefited all of us, and it's benefited the pictures as well. I think we take lots better pictures these days as well.
No, certainly. Debbie, just your opening thoughts. I mean, as we're talking about the digital transformation journey and digitization and digitalization and the differences between the two, just reflecting on the feedback from the attendees, the very tight split between it being all about the machines and the innovation and the AI and the IoT and all the jargons that come with this world, or it being about more of a balance between humans. Your reflections?
I think, Fifi, the results are quite interesting. Yes, for me, it's all about the technology. And I see that the audience are saying that, it's also beneficial for humans. And I think just talking to my fellow accounting counterparts, I think we're living in a very exciting time with this new technology, embracing it. We have always been called number crunchers. Yes, we will continue to crunch those numbers, but we want to make decisions. Gerhard has spoken earlier on about the importance of the strategic setting and supporting strategic direction of the organization with the utilization of the cloud. So I'm very excited for myself as an accountant and all our fellow finance managers out there. And it does help humans a lot. If you read it on its own, It's going to be extremely useful. As accountants, we know that time is money. And we are now going to be able to fast track what we do, be more efficient. And I know generally as finance people, we want to be sure to make the right decisions out of the numbers that come out. And this will allow us to do that. So very, very exciting times across the board I see coming.
All right, so let's maybe just talk about what you do see coming as we do a really deep dive into this topic of discussion today being the future of finance as we see it today. Gerhard, as a business leader who interacts with a lot of businesses across different industries and spectrums, what has your experience from those interactions been, and what do you think that those companies need to know about the future of finance as you see it?
And I think very important for us is if we look at the goals that we just spoke about, the technology and the human side. So as business, we know we need to adapt and change to be competitive. And how do we do it? I mean, to bring it really practical is what technology do you need inside your business to make a process more efficient? Part of that, as I always say, very importantly, is how do you bring the person to the technology that they can feel safe to make sure that they can change? Because if you bring in technology, a lot of times the employees that's going to need to use that technology feels unsafe. They think, oh, but the technology is going to take over my work. And the question should be, how do we get the two, I want to say, worlds aligned? And as technology leaders in your organization, first of all, you need to look at what do I need to streamline or make better, because that's what you're after. Second of all, go look at what technology you need. And thirdly, the people that will be using that, bring them along in that journey, make them part of it, let them see the benefits. And as Debbie said earlier on, that's what we want to achieve. By creating that value, not just the business will succeed, but the customer inside will be there, and you're going to sit with a happy colleague in your business.
Right. You know, probably a lot easier said than done for most attendees, you know, who perhaps don't are in the early parts of their journey, their digital journey, and wondering how to better strike that balance. And maybe we can get into some practical examples from you a little later, given that you are perhaps relatively at the mature phase of that. But Debbie, just to bring you in as well, and to bring out your excitement and perhaps exactly what you're excited about, in your interactions as a business coach, again, similar to Gerhard, you get to speak with a lot of businesses across industries, at different sizes at that. And also as an accountant, I mean, what do you think that some of these enterprises and some of these individuals need to know about an effective or how to go ahead with their digital transformation journey?
I think in terms of what they need to know, it's understanding the full benefits, Fifi. I think once you know how something will benefit you and how it will enhance value to the organization, because we're all about value, then we will be able to better adopt it and better roll it out. And in the accounting world, in the finance world, you know, what we have discussed a lot earlier on with Jordaan was the ability that the system allows you for that compliance. We have a big risk around compliance these days. We need to put so many additional systems in place. But like Gerhard said earlier on, cloud is there to assist you in streamlining those processes. And we really want to work on the matters, you know, at the meat of the business, at the heart of the business. Focus on what makes the business tick, opposed to, you know, just chasing papers and chasing tick points and chasing, yes, I've done this correctly. So I think for me as well, that is very, very powerful, and it can make us a lot more efficient.
No, certainly. And I suppose that even when this pandemic blows over, there's a lot of changes that have happened in the past 18 months that we will have to stick with if we want to still be efficient, right? In fact, there's a lot of companies that are even saying that they might adopt remote working and a hybrid model system for life. And therefore, technology does come into play. But Jordaan, speaking to your fellow attendees who also wear the finance hat in their organization, why is cloud so integral to that finance function? And is it just only about the cloud, or there perhaps maybe other technologies that you have found useful in your job to complement what the cloud can do?
I think Debbie touched on it actually. I think it's a lot about the value, the solution that we as Sage want to give our customers and also other cloud providers. I'll give some practical stories at the end, but I think it's creating for yourself that ecosystem. Integration is key in these cloud platforms, and you need to start somewhere. So let's say your business has got a need for a cloud fleet management system or a time and accounting system. yes, you are going to realize some benefits by purchasing and implementing such a cloud solution for your business. But the moment it starts integrating, and you've created this ecosystem, maybe you now go for the ERP system as the backbone to your cloud functionality, you bring on the cloud CRM system, that whole ecosystem just blows up those benefits completely or increases them to a level where you're actually getting the real benefit of cloud. The first poll that we had, the third of people that said they're not clear about the benefits of cloud. We need to keep emphasizing what those benefits are. And I want to use 3 practical stories to illustrate that. The first one was, Gerhard also talked about this customer who phoned us during the start of the lockdown saying, I cannot access my premises. I need to run my payroll. I've got a desktop payroll solution. What do I do? I think it's a lot more evident for all of us that accessing your data from anywhere is extremely important. We cannot, in this day and age, be at a point where we need to be in a physical location to actually access our data or our systems. The second story is about a cloud backup provider. And this is a real story that happened. So in their sales cycle, they met with the prospective company and signed all of the documentation for the demo. And as part of that, they got a backup of the company's data, financial data specifically. And they did the demo, and the prospect said they need some time to make the decision. Shortly after the demo, that prospect of theirs had a fire in the building burned down. They lost all of their data. And because of this demo, this backup cloud provider could actually restore them within 24 hours, all of their data back intact. And I think that really, really shows the benefits of adopting cloud for purposes of data integrity and making sure that your data is safe. The third point I want to touch on is security. For us as vendors, for us as a software vendor, if we have a cloud ecosystem out there, let's say we pick up a vulnerability in one of our products, it's very easy for us to fix that vulnerability in the code, to push it down to all of our customers seamlessly without them actually even knowing that that update has gone through and that they're more secure. From the customer's perspective, cybersecurity is becoming more and more important for everyone and on everyone's radar. And smaller and medium-sized businesses cannot always invest in a full-time security team. So what you get by going for a cloud provider in terms of your ERP system is a dedicated team looking after the security of the platform, almost acting as your own security operations center. So you're getting a very high quality and level of security by just adopting that and making sure that you're using a cloud platform.
So I think that just in summary, and particularly for those who perhaps didn't say or said that they didn't understand the benefits of the cloud, you have an issue or a benefit of value, as Debbie has highlighted. You also have a benefit of efficiency as well as a security in this time where, you know, the hackers are getting busy with their hackers. Whether it's foolproof, maybe there's something that we can get to later on in the discussion. But I want to speak about those, if we may, who are aware of the benefits of the cloud, as it were, but are still hesitant or resistant to take it up. Kind of like what we are seeing with the COVID-19 vaccine. Although I won't get into those politics because, I mean, that's a different dynamic altogether. But perhaps let's kick it off with you, speaking on behalf of your attendees, Jordaan, the hesitancy and those who are naysayers against the cloud. I mean, what would you say to them?
I think you run the risk of being left behind. I think the world has changed where vendors focus on specific areas of businesses. I used fleet management and time and accounting as an example earlier. So you will find software vendors that zoom in on a specific functionality or business requirement, coming up with a solution for that. And all of these solutions are going the direction of cloud. That's why I said it's so important to create that ecosystem for yourself with your cloud platforms, to make sure everything is integrated. And you really can't in this day and age be left behind with the technology. What we try and do in terms of providing solutions to our businesses, for the small businesses, it's very important to enable our customers to get invoices out quickly from anywhere, to get their invoices paid as quickly as possible, to spend less time on admin. For the medium-sized customers, is to provide that insight to make the correct decisions for your business. So I don't really think it's an option. I think the whole world is evolving to that point where everyone is going to have to adopt cloud sooner, hopefully, rather than later.
Yeah, it's not an option, and I suppose who wants to be left behind? I think there's a human element of FOMO in all of us, that fear of missing out. But Gerhard, perhaps maybe we take a step back and just even beyond the fact that there is this hesitancy to adopt the cloud, do you understand perhaps why, from your interactions with some of the businesses that you have had the opportunity to spend time to, why there's this resistance, and maybe even from the CFO function in particular, that may need to lead this charge to adopt it?
So again, what we see in the market is customers aren't educated.
Education.
They can't make a decision. Now, if you take it back, and we all touched on it during the discussion, but if I've got the insight and the information to change, maybe I feel more secure to make the decision. And as Jordaan said, if you don't make it, you could be left behind. Now again, if we look at the change in businesses, let's educate people. Debbie playing a key role there at GIBS, educating our future leaders. How is business changing? How is technology changing? And by educating and giving that assurance that technology enhances, it makes things better. And it gives us as humans the capability to learn faster. You don't want to do the same thing today, tomorrow, and the rest of your career. You want to be challenged. You want to learn new things. And by same is the cloud journey. And what we've seen with businesses where our partners goes in and they unpack the technology need with potential customers. They create that change management process, that secure environment to say, it's fine, we don't have all the answers, but if we look, how can we streamline your business to give you those answers and to make sure everyone can use it. So for me, education as part of this transformation is educating, I want to say, our kids, our future leaders, getting involved in programs with universities, as Debbie is doing, and making sure that everyone knows where it's moving. I'm going to take another example. When I got my first cell phone, it was a Nokia. I was at varsity, I was going to reveal my age, but that's about 20 years ago. And it was like a brick. And it had an antenna that opened up like that with only dialing down.
I think the fact that you had a Nokia to begin with reveals your age, Gerhard.
and today, I'm an Apple fan, so I've got an iPhone. And if you just look at how it changed, but yes, you moved from, I want to call this static normal telephone, even though it's got an antenna, to something slick, which you can use multiple things for. Not just dialing, but if you're on to taking photos. Was it a difficult transition? No, it was actually quite cool to learn new technology, and I think that's the way businesses and individuals should look at it. Bring the human side back into the environment, challenge yourself to make things better.
But you highlight a very important element in that equation being education, and I just wondered to what degree perhaps maybe there is some fake news being spread about the cloud that needs to be quelled out there, and that you as Debbie, as an educator, perhaps need to ensure is put out quickly. I remember speaking with a couple of individuals from GIBS over this past year, and I know that the institution has largely been working remotely, right?
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, perhaps in your experience and the experience with the business leaders that perhaps you have encountered, if you understand why there is an element of hesitancy to adopt the cloud and your response to that.
I think for me, I have to get on the bandwagon of education.
Right.
Fifi, we need to understand what is involved in cloud. And even in preparation for the session, there is so much knowledge out there about cloud. And a lot of work has been done behind the scenes you know, and for our finance people, there has been some questions around costing, you know, how is that going to impact on my targets going forward if I now invest in the cloud? But there are some solutions. Speak to your auditors, make sure your cost classification is clear so that we understand what is CAPEX, what we can take through the bottom line that may impact. Let's start planning towards it. And I think, you know, Jordaan talked earlier about not being left behind, but for me, it's a cost of not doing it now. And the cost is going to come through sooner rather than later. So I would encourage people to really get on board with this, begin to reap the benefits sooner for your organization, and just also plan forward, you know, build it into your targets if targets is one of the challenges that you have from a finance perspective. But the benefits are there, your staff are happier, you are more efficient. It's a wonderful tool, you know, and accountants, finance managers, let's be cool, man. Let's just log on wherever we are in a coffee shop, you know, right on the top of the mountains, wherever we are, let's log on, let's quickly send an invoice. People wouldn't understand what's happening, but love your business. And for me, that is what the cloud allows us to do, is to really love your business, get into it wherever you are, whenever, and you can still reap the results. And that's why I see it as a huge opportunity cost if you don't get in sooner rather than later.
Yeah, now I'd love to work on top of the mountains. I think that the telecoms players have got their work cut out in ensuring that they signal on top of many mountains in South Africa. But I hear your point clearly. But talking about staff, and again, just to go back to what I had mentioned, I have interacted with the team for some time, and I've felt your passion around the balance between the people and the technology, and that embracing technology and a digital transformation journey need not be about one over the other. But now maybe Jordaan, you can kick this off, because for a finance individual, a CFO now who's making that tough decision to, you know, digitally transform his organization and is having to justify the additional cost that will take, and also having to justify the additional cost of keeping the same headcount in this environment in which you know, money is something that we need to guard and watch closely. But what would you say to the individual who's thinking about the digital transformation journey in terms of that opportunity cost between people and technology?
That's a very good question, and I think I need to make one correction first. So in terms of the costs of these cloud platforms, there's actually a cost benefit. If we think about the desktop or on-prem systems that everyone's used to, you had to invest in hardware, in service, in infrastructures within your premises. If someone had to work remotely, there was additional infrastructure investment you had to make. With this whole cloud environment and where everything is going, it's much more of a pay-as-you-go system, if I can call it that, and so much easier in terms of hardware maintenance and all of that, which disappears, and you can actually leave that to your cloud vendor to take care of. That's where all of these benefits of security and of data backups and everything comes from. All of those mundane tasks that we had to worry about, and the redundancy and the accessibility, is suddenly being taken care of by your SaaS provider. So there's definitely cost efficiencies in that. With regards to the human element, I think is very important. What excites me is this younger generation coming through. I don't think the generation of today that actually studies towards an accounting degree or something like that really see themselves in a data processing role in the future. That's what we want to automate. That's what we want to try and get away from, is automating those mundane tasks so that we can focus on the more exciting things and analyzing the data, making the decisions, tweaking the models, all of that. I think that's where we're headed. And I think it's a much more exciting world that we can look forward to as people moving into the job market, moving into finance, and people having a passion for finance. It's a much better world than what it used to be. So I really think the benefits are there, and it's very clear.
But you spoke about the youth. Let me flip the coin and speak about maybe the individuals who've got a couple of more grey hairs on their head or wrinkles on their face, and who are looking at this and thinking, you know, what about them? Perhaps Gerhard, as a business leader, you can just help us understand, maybe with an example or two, on how you've managed to balance the two elements.
So definitely, as a leader in our own organization, I love music, and I love to try out and test new technologies. And I'm going to use a very practical example within Sage. Is last year when the pandemic hit, we switched the entire organization within 3 days from being at our offices to being virtual at their own homes, engaging with Microsoft Teams. That's how we switched the business. That's the one side. The second side is how we're servicing our customers. And again, with our technology and our call centers, we had that technology already to flip the switch and say, okay, now I'm supporting the customer. And to bring it back to business leaders, and Jordaan touched on it, is go and look at the pros and cons for you. Yes, you're used to having desktop software, working a certain way, etc. But go and do that analysis of what do you say? What can the benefits be? And we spoke about security, we spoke about having access anywhere, anytime. We spoke about reducing your infrastructure, and then you can learn someone new how to use that technology. And again, a practical example, with one of our customers, they wanted to switch immediately from desktop to cloud within their payroll environment. And we took the backup, we restored it in the cloud, we did the education with the customers' teams in a few hours. They accepted it and they moved on, and they're using their software today. And so we can speak about another example is again within the medical environment, where the customer using their ERP wanted to add on. I want to use a practical example of just normal on-the-fly remote access to do specific billing and invoice. And again, by using our certified partners, where we have that ecosystem to plug into our solutions, they went on their journey and they rolled it out, and today they achieved their objective. So there's many examples we can talk about, but I want to just highlight again the benefits of Jordaan mentioned it. Quick updates. We want to bring in a new feature in our software, all one instance, we roll it out. Security layers for data to be secure. Don't have that worry about, is my service secure on-prem? We do that management as the provider of the technology. And then scalability. The way the business is today, how do you want it to look for the future? And you need to grow, and we grow with our customers. At Sage, we've got a saying, we want to keep a customer for life. And we touch on a small business. Debbie, you spoke about your business earlier on when we had a chat over coffee. Using software and how you want to grow your business. And today, as a provider and a vendor, we've got that responsibility to make sure you can run your business today, but we grow with you. Maybe in 10 years' time, there's 10 vendors doing this work, and we need to provide new complexities or new solutions rather to your complex business, but you're still a customer now. And I want to leave the audience just with that thought is, connect with our business partners, reach out to us. If you're uncertain, we'll help you in this education process. That's all part of our responsibility at Sage. So please connect with us, look us up on LinkedIn, Twitter, where you need, and ask us those questions to give you the solutions.
Yeah, no, I think you highlight also a very important part of how business will be conducted going forward, Gerhard. I mean, you're providing a service, fine, but it needs to go beyond that. And as you did highlight the partnership that you are hoping to continue with Debbie and growing together, and I think that this is how business will need to be done, this collaboration that was formed over the pandemic period. I'm hoping certainly that is something that does stay. But Debbie, just maybe if you can just highlight from the individual's perspective, maybe we've got people who are not necessarily a CFO right now, maybe you're working with the CFO in that function, maybe you're working in other areas of the business, right? And we're looking at this the digital transformation, and we're asking ourselves about these skills individually that I need to have to remain relevant for the future. What would you say?
think there is a general, WIT has done a very interesting study around what are the new skills that are required for the future, for 2030. And there's a lot of talk about, SMAC. We used to talk about STEM. So SMAC, Jordaan touched on it earlier on. You need to know how to operate yourself socially, how to use mobile devices, how to do analytics, and the C stands for cloud. How can you operate the cloud? So SMAC is going to become the new buzzword in the skills area and arena as far as digitalization is concerned. Okay,
so it's flipping, it's got an entire new meaning. Doesn't smack traditionally mean you're talking rubbish or something like that? Is that my error? But continue.
Yes, so those skills are going to become very important for us. And I think we talked about earlier on, it's about individuals growing, and some of us have got such a passion to grow and to develop and to become better versions of ourselves. So I'd like to encourage everybody to embrace technology, learn. I love what Gerhard said earlier on, Mr. Nokia to, iPhone, you can't get better than that. So well done, Gerhard there. And I'd like to just encourage everybody to just embrace this learning process, this growth process. I think being intuitive is still very critical, a critical skill to have, inquisitive, asking questions. And those are the top skills that will continue to drive, the growth of the business over the years. And people can get themselves ready for that.
If I can just add to that briefly. And you were asking about the grey hairs and maybe the no hairs, right? The more seasoned and older finance professionals. What we see is that customers are amazed the moment they see these platforms in action. In terms of ERP systems, the reduction in time it takes to close your accounts on a month end or on a year end is phenomenal. So yes, people are reluctant to change until they see what it can do, right? There's a lot of us, I'm a big fan of Excel, right? The reality though with an Excel report is the moment you're done with that report, a minute later the report is outdated, right? Whereas with a cloud dashboard, you don't need to run the report in the first place, right? And it's always a live version of the numbers. So no more updating the numbers, no more looking at the wrong version of the spreadsheet or anything like that. We see customers cutting out 70% of the Excel within their finance organizations because they've gone for a cloud platform with automated dashboard reporting. So I think it's a lot about just seeing it in action and then people's eyes.
Seeing is believing.
Yes.
As it were. I mean, you, Debbie and Gerhard speaking so fondly about the Apple. I'm just wondering how many of the attendees are Android users and thinking, it's always a debate there. And I think we'll bring you guys back in if you can indulge us with your finger activity once again by responding to the poll question before we do get into some conclusion and some final remarks from our comments. The poll should be up on your screen. And we have the outcome of the poll. I suppose let's all look at it. The areas in which, if they were addressed in the business, would really make a lot of lives easier in the business. It's quite a fine split. Jordaan, your take?
Well, Fifi, the fact that we've got the lowest response rate on reduced close time from hours to minutes means we don't have a lot of accountants in the audience, right? Because that's an extremely important element for the people in a finance function. But it makes sense. I'm very glad to see that people value the use of the reports and the dashboards, the automation of that, which I mentioned earlier, automating processes, real-time visibility that touches back on those dashboards. We need to be able to make decisions quicker. One of my biggest frustrations is when I need to engage with senior leaders in the business and they want to know what do the numbers say on X, Y, and Z because we need to make a decision and you don't have those numbers readily available. So I think it's spot on. I think it shows how widespread those benefits are.
I tend to also agree with the main audience in voting in favor of accuracy and also the automation of really complex things to make my life easier. But Gerhard, your take on the outcome?
Yeah, no, I love the results. As Jordaan and yourself said, on the reporting, automation, flexibility, and real time. And I want to maybe bring it in with a customer story. So right after or the following session, Fifi, that you're gonna show us, we're gonna speak about and showcase the power of Sage Intacct. And one of our customers using the product, and they moved over onto the product last year, I want to say around about October, November, and they said what was their challenges before. They had CRM and finance as separate silos in their business. Their order to cash process was manual. They had limited reporting within their organization, and they had a lack of management reporting and dashboards. And after they switched to Intacct, what did they gain as an organization? They've got seamless integration now between their CRM and their finance function, with automation creating that efficiency, workflow approvals. They now have vastly improved AR visibility, and they've got their management and reporting dashboards available, as Jordaan said, to leaders in their organization, giving that real-time visibility. And then lastly, they said that they cut the process for AR analytics and debt collection with 5 days. And to bring that back to, I want to call it Jordaan's work, is if that can be achieved as a CFO in an organization, it's massive swings and gains you get into your business. So I'm looking forward to the session coming on Sage Intacct now, and I really do hope the audience enjoy it.
Yeah, the gains in maybe bonuses. Who knows? Want to share? Okay, no, maybe not. Yeah, let's actually go into the demo session as you have introduced, Gerhard. So a bit of a demonstration of the Sage native cloud financial management solution, and it will be given by Sage's cloud native solution. Oh, sorry, mind me for that. It will be given by Grant there. Grant, take it away.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sage Intacct overview demo. My name is Grant Ball. I'm a member of the pre-sales team at Sage in Johannesburg, and I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes or so with you to give you a comprehensive overview on Sage Intacct's capabilities. Before we go into the product, let's have a look at developer.intacct.com webpage. It's a webpage dedicated to the creation of web service APIs. So to enable the ecosystem on how to go ahead and create those web service APIs to connect Sage Intacct with other systems. So you may be using systems today that you need to continue using but have that information integrated with Sage Intacct. That is very possible with what we call a web service API. And if we have a look at marketplace.intacct.com, you'll see a host of software categories such as CRM, with a connector for Salesforce, Sage CRM, a host of others, including Microsoft Dynamics CRM, have already been connected to Sage Intacct, which should give you peace of mind to know that your current systems can be integrated with Sage Intacct today. Sage Intacct is a cloud-native product, and that means that we're accessing Sage Intacct over the World Wide Web via a web browser, browser agnostic, so any type of browser, which means it can operate on any type of device. The important part is that that device has got a connection to the internet and a browser. When both of those are in place, you're able to access Sage Intacct from anywhere in the world on any device. And being cloud native, it means that Sage has the ability to push the software updates through to your instance of Sage Intacct, so that your software is continuously and automatically updated, so that you don't have to do those updates yourself. You'll also see on the home page, so when you log into Sage Intacct on your home page, you've got access to read the release notes of the upcoming release. And because there's updates every 3 months or every quarter, we can see the release notes for all of the releases that have already taken place. Another benefit of having an online cloud native software package is the online help. The online help center, meaning that the online help is also maintained and available on the World Wide Web, which means as the new software updates are being pushed through to your instance, the help files are readily available for you to use and start learning about that new functionality. And also it leads towards a paperless environment. You're not sitting with a wad of outdated training documents and training manuals scattered all around your office. Sage Intacct is also multi-company. Now what we can see here in the top level drop down is that I've got access to switch to all of the companies. And being the super user, that's just part of my role. But what you'll notice is that when we flag another entity to operate in, what the system is doing is actually just opening up another tab, and now we're operating with inside of that entity. Being the super user, I can navigate between multiple entities, but because all of the entities are sitting inside of one database, it means that you don't have to log out of one database and into another. If we compare the role, so being the super user, I've got access to pretty much everything in the system. If we use procurement as an example, or the purchasing module, we have a look that I've got the ability to do purchase requisitions, purchase orders, purchase order receipts, purchasing invoices, and purchase returns. Now, as Emma being the super user, we compare the role to Nikki. You can see that Nikki's got a limited number of modules, and inside the procurement module, Nikki can only do a purchase requisition. And you'll also see that Nikki's user is dedicated to a single company, which means that Nikki cannot transact in any other company. A significant difference between the software product that you're working with today and Sage Intacct is that Sage Intacct has got a dimensional ledger. And what that means is, let's just switch to our company. It means that we've got instead of having a segmented ledger where the GL account is strung together with different segments, that makes reporting and budgeting very inflexible. So we end up with one long concatenated string of digits strung together that depicts an account and a cost center and a project all strung together. With Sage Intacct, it works differently. We have the account code separated from the segments, which we call dimensions. Now this is just an example of some of the demo dimensions that have been set up. What we do here is we actually attach the dimension to the transaction, and in the transaction is the GL account. So separate from the GL account is the dimension, which means we can have multiple dimensions or multiple segments attached to a GL account in a single transaction, which means we can analyze the postings to that account. So we can understand where our revenue is coming from, where our expenditure is coming from, and what regions, what type of customers, suppliers, projects, grants. All of these dimensions are then accumulating data, which is then we can then slice and dice against the GL account code. Now, if we have a look at a transaction, so just to understand what this really looks like inside of a transaction, let's open up a purchase order number 72, and inside this purchase order, down on the lines, if we just scroll down to the lines, we get to see the product that we're selling or buying, the project, the task, the location, so the location is the entity, and the value that we're posting against this combination of the of dimensions. Now, when we look at the spend insights, we get to see the actual account that's being posted to. So this is the expense account, which we've got a 90,000 Rand budget for, of which 80,000 of that budget has already been consumed. 40,000 of that is sitting as committed expenses, so on purchase orders that haven't yet become actuals. But if we have a look at this, if we push this order through, we're going to have minus 30,000 in our budget. So we're going to exceed budget by 30,000. Now, there are a host of parameters that control what Sage Intacct should do when we're about to go over budget or not, and we set those rules up during the implementation to ensure that, if you do allow budget to be exceeded, there's workflow approvals for that. Otherwise, we actually stop the user from creating the transaction there and then. And if you're working in a non-profit organization, the dimensions that you're probably using would look more like funder, which is the donor, the type of funds that those donations are being used for, the projects and grants that are in place that are actually taking that money and spending it against budgets. Ultimately, we're going to be ending up with a set of reports that we can then slice and dice the financial information by these different types of dimensions. So let's navigate through to our general ledger module, having a look at the reports. We're going to start searching for a statement of, now as you see, as I'm typing through, it's going to bring up everything that starts with statement. We're going to select our report, And what you'll notice now is the different types of output formats that we have when we're running a report. So we can store the report in a folder on a server somewhere, push it out to an HTML web page, comma delimited file, PDF, Excel, or schedule it. This is quite interesting because what we can do over here is we can put in a set of recipients and have the system email the report to those recipients at a set date and a set time. So let's push this report out to HTML, and what we can see now is those different dimensions being used as filter criteria, which allows us to go down to a very granular level in our financial reporting. So when we run this report, what we'll notice now for this particular fund, we've got the operating budget, the actual consumption of budget, the percentage variance, and the actual difference in value. So there we can see the dimension be used as a heading of a report. Running a different type of report, what we'll be able to see is how we can slice and dice that dimensional information into columns and rows. So for example, again, if we just type in statement, we go to our statement of activities for primary, and when we run this report this time, we'll see the different type of fund restrictions, which is dimensions, being used as column headings, all rolling up into the total amount over there. So dimensions can be used to run a report without being part of a row or a column. We can use dimensions as columns, and what we'll see now is how we can use dimensions in rows. So having a look at a project manager's dashboard, a project snapshot, there we can see the different project dimensions being used as rows, and then on the columns we get to see the revenue generating activities, the expense generating activities, all rolling up to determine whether we're making a profit or a loss on those projects. You'll see the different shades of green. Light green is the zeros, the dark greens is as those increments start increasing up to 100. And the same applies for the red. So when we're not doing so well, so in this example we're way over budget, you'll see that it displays the values on the report in a red color. Now the 0 being a very light pink and 100 being a dark red. And wherever we see blue text, that means we can drill down. So from our dashboard, from our project manager's dashboard, we can drill down on this particular project, the clinical study design, have a look at the account receivable, and there's a list of all the invoices that make up that amount, and we can see blue text again, which means we can actually drill down to that invoice. And there's the color-coded indicators again, displaying in red the fact that this invoice is overdue. Let's go have a look at some of the other dashboards. You'll notice that we've got role-based dashboards. So if we have a look at the CFO Global View dashboard, this gives the CFO the ability from a global perspective, so from a group perspective, to have a look at the figures for the entire group. We can see that the CFO has the ability to filter down to the specific subsidiary entities to get the values out of there. And there's the color-coded indicators again, telling us that our total revenue is up on the prior month. Our operating expenses, however, are also up on the prior month. So up arrow doesn't always mean good. It's the color-coded indicator that tells us whether it's good or bad. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see graphical representations of data. Again, we can see some more health checks. EBITDA margins down. So do we have a profitability problem or a cash flow problem? Well, I suppose if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see our debt ratio is pretty good. So cash on hand, it's down. Working capital is up. So we may have a cash flow problem. But also we can see that our operating expenses are up as well. So immediately, from these health checks, we can see our gross profit is down on the past 3 months or the past quarter. So these color-coded indicators give us a very, very quick view of the general health of the group or of a specific entity, and with the ability to then drill down into the source documents like we've seen in the previous instances. Let's go have a look at the Account Receivable Manager dashboard. So again, information being displayed for that specific role, where we can see an aging graph, a trend. So our aging is have a bit of an upward trend, I suppose. Our account receivable showing us a red, which means that our debtors book is very high. We're not collecting our cash quick enough. That puts us in a bit of a vulnerable cash flow state. So that's something you really need to start actioning. And if you're in a not-for-profit organization, you're probably less concerned with profitability and debtors aging. I'm more interested about foundation metrics. So for a specific fund, what's the average award amounts, the volunteer hours, how many awards have been issued per region? What about fundraising efficiency? We're interested to know more about what is the average gift amount per donor. We can see it's down on the previous year, but the average number of gifts per donor is up on the previous year. So in a nutshell, if it's dashboard reporting that you need, Sage Intacct has got you covered. Let's move on to supply chain. So should you be a product-centric organization, so you're buying and selling product, the inventory module, sales order entry module, and purchasing module has got you covered there. Should you be starting with your procurement process with a purchase requisition, and there's delegation of authority rules on those requisitions, there may be 1 approver, 2 approvers, 3 approvers, just depending on the value of those orders, then what Sage Intacct will do, it will send out workflow notifications to the users to let them know that a purchase requisition requires their approval. And once that approval's been made, the requester will be notified that their requisition has either been approved or rejected, and if it has been rejected, what the comments are. Now, being a cloud-native system, we are able to approve these workflows directly from the email on our devices by simply clicking on the display link. Now, I'm already logged in to Sage Intacct, so it's not going to ask me to log in again on this device. But on your phone, it's going to ask you for your username and password and then take you directly through to the screen where you can go ahead and approve. Now you can approve directly from the screen by flagging the checkboxes, approving them individually, approving all of them in one go, or just view the transaction. You probably want to see if there's enough budget for this particular invoice. And there we go, we've got enough funds available. We can use that information to make our approve or decline decision. And when that purchase requisition has been approved, we can go ahead and convert that requisition into a purchase order. Again, this is just some automation in play, so we don't have to go and manually create that purchase order again. On creation, Sage Intacct will email that purchase order through to the vendor. We can see an example of the email that the vendor would receive. We can see a PDF copy of the purchase order attached to that invoice. This is a sample layout. What we do in the implementation is put your logos, your layouts, etc., make the documents look, like they do with the organization today. And the supplier would then, based on that purchase order, then deliver the goods. Now, there is another way to generate purchase orders, and that's through a sales order. Let's go have a look at that. So if we have a look at sales order number 51, and again, if you have a look there, we can convert this to a delivery note or a shipping document, or convert it to an invoice. But let's go view the sales order. And if we have a look at the history, we'll see that this sales order was converted from a sales quotation. But this sales order number 51 also created 2 purchase orders, purchase order number 36 and 37. And the way Sage Intacct made that happen was with the provision of the following checkbox: buy to order and dropship. Now we can see on the sales order that when buy to order is flagged, it means that we're not holding this item in inventory, but when we get demand from our customer, we trigger off an order to our supplier so that we can get the goods in, so we can supply to our customer. The dropship says that we want to order this item from our supplier, but we don't want the supplier to deliver to us. So the delivery address on that purchase order will be the customer's delivery address. And that's how Sage Intacct automatically created these 2 purchase orders from the sales order. Now, when the sales order has been shipped, we go ahead, we would convert that order into an invoice, and that invoice then becomes a receivable in our debtors module. The supplier or vendor will then send their invoice, so we'd capture their invoice into the system, and if there's delegation of authority on that invoice, we'd have an approval as well. So the approvers will be notified on email that there's an approval waiting for them. They would go into the invoice. I suppose they could go down, have a look to see if we have enough budget. Yes, we do have enough budget, and they can go ahead and approve. Now, when it comes to payments, we can have a look at the pay invoices. We can filter our payments by due date, by supplier, by the type of payment we're making, and also which bank we're paying from. And you'll see that we've got the current bank balance. So we can flag all invoices that are due for payment. We can see that the selected invoice total increases. Or if cash is tight, we can be a little bit more selective over those invoices. Now, you can also see that there's a credit for this particular invoice, which means that the real balance is actually 11,000 Rand less. So what we can do for that particular invoice over there is go ahead and apply the credit. You can see it's applied that credit, which has then reduced the amount to pay, and we can go click Pay Now. Now, when we click Pay Now, the system creates a pending payment file, and there we can see the approval payments. So if there's workflow on the payments as well, the approvals will be notified. They can come into the screen and approve or reject. And then once that payment has been approved, we then go into the cash management module. We generate the electronic payment file, download the electronic payment file, and submit that electronic payment file through to our banking software so that the banking software can execute those payments off to the vendors. So we've paid our vendors, we've received money from our customers. Let's use the cash management module to help us reconcile our bank statement. So we would go into the bank or the cash management module, select the bank that we're reconciling, and we'll notice here that we have the ability to attach a PDF copy of the actual bank statement that we printed out. We've got the import file, so we've downloaded the comma delimited file that we'd like to import, and we have the ability to create a set of matching rules. Now this gives us the ability to get down to a very granular level of automatic matching, and the whole point would be for Sage Intacct to match everything that comes through in the bank statement so that we don't have to do any manual matching ourselves. When that bank statement is imported, Sage Intacct will perform a match. We can see that there's nothing unmatched, so if we set our filter criteria to show everything on the Intacct side, so this is all of the unreconciled items on the banking tab, is where we have the items that came through on the bank statement. And what we'll notice here, the items that came through the bank statement, 1,700 and 400 for Singleton Brothers, was actually matched to the payments that were unreconciled sitting on the Intacct tab. Now the alternative to importing a bank statement is to use the Sage Banking Cloud, which means that as soon as a transaction hits our bank account, it's automatically fed into Sage Intacct so that we don't need to import a bank statement anymore. So what that means is if we go to the setup of our banks, what we'll do inside of this setup is connect the actual bank to our online bank. So once we've opened up the screen, we go to the Banking Cloud tab and we click Connect. And what Sage Intacct will now do is to present a number of banks to which we can connect. At the time of selecting FNB, the next step will be Sage Intacct to ask me to enter the online banking credentials, username and password. And once that connection has been made, it's maintained, which means as soon as transactions are hitting the bank account, those transactions are then being fed into Sage Intacct's cashbook. And because we set up those matching rules, the matching will take place automatically, which means that you don't ever have to do that matching again yourself. Now that we've reconciled our cashbook, we have been generating invoices for our customers, our suppliers, and those invoices have been generating input and output VAT transactions. So we can use the tax management module to help us create the VAT 201. So what we can see here is a report, a VAT detailed report, and under tax submissions, we can go ahead and ask Sage Intacct to create the VAT 201 for us when we create our new tax submission. I've already done one for 2020, so when we click on view, we scroll down a bit, we'll see that there's a VAT 201 in PDF format. Now this is the PDF that Sage created for us. You can see the layout. It's putting the output VAT or amounts into those sections, the input into their sections, and ultimately whether we're going to be paying over VAT or receiving a refund. The other one is to create the CSV file. So what we can do is use that CSV file and integrate that file in to SARS e-filing, and then we can submit the tax return that way. Should you be operating in a group environment, so multi-entity, where consolidation at month end is required, Sage Intacct's Global Consolidation module will help us with that. So before we go into the consolidation, let's just have a look at the setup. And inside of our book, when we edit our consolidation book, what we'll see is the ability to link the subsidiaries to the actual group consolidation, and also to flag the inter-entity auto-elimination checkbook, which tells Intacct to eliminate the intercompany transactions inside the elimination entity. And those eliminations are performed when the consolidation is run. So to run the consolidation come month end, we can simply flag the month that we're going to be consolidating and go ahead and perform the consolidation. We can also set up a recurrence, and the recurrence is really an automated trigger that can run the consolidation for us monthly, weekly, or even daily. So if you're having a look at some group reports on your dashboards, those will be updated on a daily basis. And once the consolidation has been performed, you can have a look on your dashboards. So we do have a consolidation dashboard, and on the consolidation dashboard we'll see a consolidated balance sheet and a consolidated P&L. And what you'll notice on the P&L, we've got all of the values coming in from the subsidiaries rolling up into the consolidated amounts, whereas the balance sheet is just showing us the consolidated amounts. And to display the balance sheet in the same format as the income statement, we would simply open up the report writer by clicking on the little pencil. And again, this is role based, so if you've got access to do this, you'll be able to open up the report writer. So we've drilled directly into the financial report writer from the dashboard, and we go through to the columns, and we'd go tell the column to expand the information by location, which is the entities. What this means is next time we run that dashboard report, we'll be able to see both the consolidated balance sheet and the P&L displaying the values that are coming through from the subsidiaries rolling up into the consolidated amount. Finally, we will close off today's session with a discussion of artificial intelligence, which Sage Intacct has in the form of Outlier Detection. What that means is Sage Intacct will analyze the history of all the journal entry postings, and as soon as it finds a journal entry that does not fit into the historical postings, it will flag that journal entry as an outlier. It will send an email alert to an approver to let them know that there's an outlier that's been detected. The approver would come into the approved journal screen. We can see that the outlier has been identified by an exclamation mark. We click on view. Intacct tells us that unusual historical matches have been found. It's on 2 lines. So we'd hover over line 1 and it tells us that the account is unusual. And on line 2, that the account with the department is unusual. And based on this information, the approver can either approve the journal entry or decline. Ladies and gentlemen, my time is up. Thank you very much for your time today.
Answering a few, and the first one has come for you, Jordaan. Just looking at it on the screen, talking about from a finance perspective, how can you educate people on how the finance function needs to work in the new world order, and how do you get management to buy in?
That's an excellent question, Fifi. I think I'm going to wrap it into one answer for both questions. I think the key is collaboration. Mm-hmm. What I've seen too often is finance functions churning out reports and data, not clearly thinking what the needs of the business are. And to determine those needs, we need to collaborate better. So I would encourage all finance functions to collaborate with the business, because the needs will differ between all of these businesses, to find out what is it that the business needs to be successful in their areas where they operate. Similar, the management question there, you need to illustrate value. So if I think of our setup where I work with our leader in marketing, leader in people function, leader in systems, I need to understand what their needs are. And we need to build whatever it is that we do as a finance function to serve their needs. So I think collaboration is key.
Mm-hmm. Now, I tend to agree with you on the importance of demonstrating that value and thereafter making sure that everyone works as one within the organization. But Gerhard, a question that has come through for you: what will happen to businesses that do not embrace